Welcome back, teacher friend. You've just hit play on another totally slime-worthy session of Teacher Summer Talks. Keep the momentum going and don't forget to work on your Summer Talks sticker challenge. Let's do this before the bell rings.
Hi there, and welcome to this presentation from the Teacher Summer Talks Audio Summit. I'm so excited that you're here and that you're ready to learn a little bit more about morning meeting and SEL and how I do it in my classroom, and hopefully how you can add it to your routine as well. My name's Mikey, and I am the author of Mikey Teach. I specialize in helping teachers elevate what matters, and I simplify the rest so that you can teach with more confidence, less stress, and a whole lot more joy. I'm thrilled to be sharing with you today about one of my absolute favorite classroom practices, and that is morning meeting. And the way that I run my morning meeting is a little bit different than the classic morning meeting, and I'll tell you all about it today. But the way that I do it really intentionally builds SEL skills for our kids. So let's go back to 2006 when I first started teaching, and I thought that classroom management meant you had to be silent and your kids had to be in rows and they had to raise their hands. And while I know that that works for some people, it didn't really work for me. And I also didn't realize the power of really working with my students on what they were doing with their mental health, how they were experiencing school, that was really what the classroom management needed that I wasn't really getting with my first years of teaching. And quickly, that idea of rows that are quiet and just raising our hands and not doing group work was quickly shattered in my first year of teaching. And throughout my first few years of teaching, I developed an understanding more and more of why morning meeting was really important. And as an upper elementary teacher, I really thought morning meeting wasn't for me. I thought morning meeting was like a K-2 thing, and it's for everybody. So that's why I'm so excited to share this with you today. I'm going to share with you a little bit about my morning meeting structure, specifically my four-quadrant structure, and how I run that compared to what you might be familiar with in the morning meeting world. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes every day, but I promise you it's worth it. And I'll tell you a little bit about that, including some data to back it up, because I'm all about that. And I'll let you know and give you some examples of how it transformed student relationships within my classroom. It helped emotional regulation, and it built the classroom community that I was dreaming of in just a few simple steps. And bonus, if you do this right, and if you practice with your kids enough, I promise that one of the best things that you'll get out of this is that you have time you don't have to be in charge of this. Your kids will be the ones that will eventually run it, and you can just sit back and kind of listen and be a part of the conversation instead of running it, which is one of the greatest things that you can do. So if you're ready to reduce some of your behavior issues, if you're ready to increase academic engagement, and if you want stronger classroom relationships, then you're in the right place. So let's get started. So very quickly, let's talk really quickly, I promise, about what SEL is and where it comes from. And I like to use the CASEL framework. That's CASEL, if you haven't heard of them before. And they categorize SEL skills into 5 different competencies. Those competencies are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And one of the reasons that I love morning meeting, especially the way that I've kind of tweaked it for myself, is that it really hits all 5 of those components, at least weekly. Sometimes I try to do it daily, but that's difficult sometimes, but it hits them weekly. And so you're building up your SEL skills across the board, multiple different ways, using the morning meeting framework. And the reason that this is so important to me is that studies consistently show that addressing social and emotional needs first. So if you think about Maslow and Bloom, you need to have Maslow before Bloom, that it leads to higher academic achievement. And in addition to that, as a little heads up for what we're going to talk about later, it also reduces the amount of behavior issues that you have in your classroom, which naturally, if you have to deal with behavior less, you can teach more. So when you have people saying, 15 to 20 minutes, I don't have time in my day for that, I'm going to push back a little bit and say, try to find that time somehow, because it really does give you more time in the long run, because you're not dealing with all the other stuff that comes with teaching, not nearly as much. I'm not going to say that it eliminates them. Wouldn't that be great? But it does reduce them. And so you're able to teach more with less interruptions, which is the whole point of it, right? So the reason we do a morning meeting in my classroom, there's a lot of different reasons, but the reason I do it pedagogically is because just like math facts need practice every day, just like spelling needs practice, emotional skills also need practice and reinforcement. And building that into the morning meeting time really develops that with kids, and it gives you the power and the ability to shape your classroom in ways that you can't do just by teaching academics. It brings in a different layer, including having stronger relationships with your kids, and it makes more sense all over the place. I'm going to give you a real world example of this because I think it's really important to hear how this works and why it works. So I have a student, we'll call him Jaden. That's not his real name, but let's call him Jaden. He would storm out of my classroom whenever he felt frustrated. And I'm talking about like, this was in August. This was like right out of the gate. He did not give me a honeymoon period, which is totally fine because some kids don't have a honeymoon period. So after we kind of addressed what was happening or figured out what was really overwhelming him, we really tailored morning meetings to the whole class, but I was specifically looking at Jaden and what he needed. And I was infusing that into the morning meeting lessons that we were doing or the conversations or things of that nature. As we started to do that, which involved naming our emotions, kind of predicting when we might blow up, how do we notice things within our body that might tell us that things are going to get a little bit, out of control for us emotionally. He began to start realizing when these things were going to come up, and he started being proactive instead of reactive. Now, I have to be honest and tell you, it did not happen right away. And there were a lot of times where we were having to step in and help him figure out how to regulate. But I would say by November, December, definitely January, this was all independent and he was able to do it on his own. So what he would do is if he knew that he was getting frustrated, he loved gaming. So he put a pause button up on the wall that kind of looked like a controller pause button. Not totally, but it was close enough. And it was something that he connected with. So that's why it worked. He would just go and hit the pause button on the wall. He would make sure that either I or my aide saw him so that we knew where he was going. And he would either step into the hall and do 3 deep breaths, or if he was feeling really frustrated, he would go on a walk around our school, which was shaped in an O. So he knew he could do 1 loop, and then he either had to check in with us and say, I need to go again, which he would just hit the pause button again so he wasn't interrupting us. Or he would come back in the room if he felt calm. And that helped him because he was able to self-regulate before it blew up into this thing that disrupted peers, that disrupted our lesson. And more importantly than that, I know sometimes that seems more important to not interrupt us, but it also helped him calm down to the point where his parents noticed at home. They were like, he's kind of doing this at home too. He's being way more proactive than he ever was. And those are the kind of things that really make morning meeting worth it, because I'm talking about Jaden, but there's more than one Jaden in your classroom, right? There's more than one kid that needs this, and that's why this is so powerful. Okay, so you're probably familiar with morning meeting, the way that it's traditionally done, which is greeting, share, activity, and morning message. And that's fine if you want to do it that way. You could even use what I'm going to talk about today and maybe try to figure out how to incorporate it into the way that you do it. But I kind of rewrote the script for how I wanted to do morning meeting in my classroom. And so I'm going to walk you through that today. The way that we have it set up in the classroom is that there are 4 quadrants. And again, the kids know by, I would say, October what the quadrants are. And I've had kids in October be able to lead it, which is the goal. I want my kids to lead it, and I want to be able to sit back and be a part of the conversation, not running the conversation for a lot of different reasons. So what are the quadrants? Well, my quadrants are praise. So we always start off with 5 minutes of praise. And that's where we are giving each other praise or noticings that we found throughout the day or the week. So that might be, I noticed that somebody helped pick up books when they fell. I noticed that, Stefan stayed behind and helped clean the classroom, even though he didn't make that mess, but he helped his friends clean it up. And so they praise each other, which brings in, and that's the first thing we do. So that brings in all this positivity. It opens everybody up to feeling really good about themselves. And I only keep this internal. I don't share this out with anybody, even the parents. We do keep a running Google Doc of this so that the kids get to see, like, I'm up on the screen, because I display it on the screen while I'm doing this. So they get to see like their name written down. They get to see literally what they did, that somebody just said to them. And it just builds up the kids so much. It's a really important piece of the puzzle for me because my kids are always praising each other. And during the day, they're always looking for different ways to praise each other so that they can say it in the morning meeting, which is really cool. The second quadrant is concerns. And this one takes a little bit of training with the kids. I'm going to be honest with you, because when they hear this word and they say, you have 5 minutes of concerns, you'll have some kids who think that it's just time to whine and moan and complain, right? And that's not what it is. So the way that I explain this to the kids is what's on your mind that you need help with, And I also tell them you're not allowed to use names. So if there's a peer conflict, they just say a student. And I don't let them get specific at all. So they don't say they're in this room, they're in somebody else's room, whatever. I say, you can say a student and that's it. And the goal is to help them problem solve. So eventually they learn, and I would say this one takes the most time for them to learn, but it does work eventually, that unless we can help you with it, it does not count as a concern. So if your kids are coming in like, I hate school, and that's their concern, well, we can't really help you with that. I mean, I'm going to help you with that on the side and try to figure out what's happening. But in that moment, that's not really something we can help you with. That's more whining. We want to talk more about concerns and how those are kind of playing out in the classroom. Quadrant 3, which is the next 5 minutes, are questions. And the questions can range from literal, like, when is gym today, all the way up to, I'm having this problem at home, can somebody help me? And again, you have to be a little bit cognizant or cautious of this because some of the questions that will come up can sometimes be not appropriate for that setting, or at least with their peers. In the past, if I've had a class, because it really depends sometimes on the group that you have, sometimes if I have a class that I know doesn't totally understand how to ask the questions yet, or sometimes ask questions that maybe don't need to be displayed to the whole community, I'll have them put down the concerns in advance, whether that's on a Google form, whether that's on paper. I do have a classroom aide, so sometimes if I have a kid maybe who needs help with the writing or needs help with that kind of process, they go talk to her and tell her what the concern is. And then we can kind of help them, or the question, we can kind of help them figure out, like, is this okay to say in morning meeting, or should you wait and we'll help you with this just teacher or, to a kid. And so that can be kind of helpful. But again, once they get the hang of it and they understand this is a question I can ask versus this is a question that I should probably save for another person, like just me and an adult, it's again really helpful, because a lot of the time they'll ask questions that your other kids have questions about too. For example, I've had kids ask me about, I'm having this problem at recess, and somebody keeps, I go on the swing and this same person keeps coming over and saying, get off the swing. What can I do to help solve that problem? And the kids are the ones who are answering them. The kids are the ones who are like helping them solve the problem, which is really powerful again, because not only are the kids empowering each other, but you're also empowering the kids to problem solve on their own, right? Because we know that one of the hallmarks of being in K-5, and it's their developmentally appropriate things, but I know sometimes they can get overwhelming for us as teachers, is they want us to solve the problems as adults. And it's really, really powerful to start giving them the power and saying, well, what would you do if there's no adult around? I know there's usually an adult around at recess, right? But let's say they're busy, or let's say you can't get to somebody right away. What would you do? How can you help solve this problem? And if you do need to involve an adult, but what could you do? So those are the kind of questions that they ask. And that's why I feel like it's so important to give them that time throughout morning meeting. The last quadrant is ideas. And that's where I let the kids kind of give me ideas on what they want to see happen in the classroom. And again, that can be very simple, from we'd love a class pet, which I guess that's not really simple, but those kind of things where you're just kind of, things that they want to see in the classroom. And then go all the way up to, I've had kids in the past say that sometimes you give us too many questions on a math worksheet. Okay, that's fair. Let's talk about what we could do instead. Or sometimes I feel like during centers, you don't really give us a choice about what to do. We have to follow a path. And so I say, well, let's brainstorm together, because if you guys come up with an idea that works, we'll use it. What would you like to see happen instead? How can we make this better for you guys, where you have a little bit more choice in the matter? But they have to come up with the solutions, not me. Again, all of these things are working on the CASEL competencies, those SEL-based competencies that are helping kids with things like having agency over themselves, teamwork, collaboration, problem-solving skills. All those things kind of pop up throughout the morning meeting. And that's why I love this four-quadrant idea. So as you're heading back into your classrooms soon, not yet, but soon, how do you implement this in your classroom? What does it look like from start in August until May? And here's what I would tell you. The first week of school, or the first week after like those first, couple of days where it's just kind of chaos and you're getting to know everybody and there's lots of icebreakers and all that stuff, I would start off with not the full 20 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and going through not necessarily the quadrants, but what does morning meeting look like? What are some of the procedures? How do we know what quadrant we're in? Those kind of things that you're going to come up with, and explaining that to them. You can also create anchor charts for the expectations, which I'll include for you in a download link that you can just print off and use. But you can create your own anchor charts too, just to remind them of what are the expectations as we meet. One thing that I would say to think about in that first week is, how do you know when someone is supposed to be talking? So in my classroom, we had a ball. The person holding the ball was the only one that was allowed to speak, and you couldn't speak unless you had the ball. That's a pretty standard one that I know a lot of teachers use. So you could just talk about something like that, where if you don't have the object, you're not holding the thing, then it's not really your turn to speak right now, and you have to wait and be patient. After that, like the first month, so I would say September, once you get past that first couple weeks, I gradually extend it, and I do it quadrant by quadrant. So I'll introduce quadrant 1, and then as the kids get comfortable with quadrant 1, then I'll add quadrant 2. And as the kids get comfortable with quadrant 2, then I'll add quadrant 3. One thing to help them that I do add in the first month is I have anchor charts that are also included in that download that I talked about, where it gives them sentence starters for each quadrant, so they can kind of start thinking about, what does this sound like? How can I start my sentences or my questions? What does it look like? And we're talking about paying attention to each other at that time. We're talking about being compassionate. We're talking about not interrupting each other. I in the past have also done things where we do little silent cheers, or that connect thing that you do with your hands. What can you do during morning meeting to make it more interactive with your kids? And then once you have all 4 of those quadrants down and you feel like your kids at least understand how all the 4 quadrants work, then I go into the full-blown morning meeting, which is the full 20 minutes. Now, if you are struggling to get in morning meeting and you're like, 20 minutes, that's a long time. Again, remember, I truly believe that it gives you back that time because you're taking care of some of those bigger issues that do blow up in the classroom, and then you're taken away from being able to teach them anyways. So just keep that in mind. But if you don't have time to do it every day, you can do it weekly and do a different kind of morning meeting or a different kind of thing the other days. You don't need to do this every day. It would be great if you could do it every day, but if you don't have that time, try to do it once a week. Try to maintain consistency with things. I will tell you that if I ever we can't start with morning meeting for some reason, whether it's an assembly or something happens, my kids are thrown off. They want morning meeting. They miss it. They're like, we had something we wanted to talk about today. And so if I have to move it for some reason, maybe it's testing day, maybe some, whatever that I can't control, I'll tell them when it's happening. So I'll say, we have to do it when you come back from recess, or we're going to do it right after art, so that they know it's coming if I do have to move it. And I would also encourage you to keep track of what's working in your classroom as far as the morning meeting goes. Keep track of what's not working so you don't repeat it. And I always like to take photos of my morning meeting in action, both for the parents, because I send them home in a newsletter, but also just to remind yourself of what you're doing, because sometimes it gets really tough in our classrooms, right? Or we have these blow ups. You have those days, right, where the kids are just like, you're like, whoa, what just happened? So those photos and those notes can remind you of why you're doing this. And it's okay that not every day is perfect, but we're going to keep working on this, and we're going to keep trying to grow our kids. All right, so let's say you want to use this in your school, but you have some things that are in your way. I'm going to give you some common troubleshooting things that you can work through if it's a challenge to maybe implement this, or you're thinking ahead saying, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this in your classroom. Or maybe you're saying, I don't know if I would get permission to do this because it's academics. So here are 4 troubleshooting tips that I have for you. The first is that if people are like, we don't have time to do that, or it's not built into the schedule, I did a tracking once where I paid attention to how many times I had to correct students, how many times there was an explosion of behavior or an explosion of emotions, and I tracked it throughout my classroom. I noticed, or I guess the data told me, that there was a 40% decrease in things like off-task behavior, name calling, anything that was negative. I was tracking negative versus positive, and it dropped by 40%. When I have less discipline to deal with, then I have more time to teach, right? So it may seem like I'm taking 20 minutes out of the day, but when you get 40% of your day back, and that's a rough estimate, but that's what I calculated based on my data, that's a huge time saving. So that's the big challenge, or that's the big answer I have for that one, is that it really does give you back that time in the long run, I promise. The second thing that you can think about is that if your students are talking over each other, use strategies to help them realize this person is the one talking right now and you're not talking right now. And that can be the object in their hands. That can be maybe turning and talking before you get to a quadrant. That can even be having your kids are in charge of things and having your kids be reminders of what the procedures are in morning meeting. The third common troubleshooting one that I hear is that my students are sharing inappropriate things. And we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. So pre-teaching parameters is really important. You can talk about the idea of the speech bubble versus the thought bubble. And again, some of your kids just aren't mentally ready to figure out like what's a speech bubble and what's a thought bubble. So you can even just politely hint to them, hey, friend, I think that maybe is a thought bubble question. Let's talk about it later. But I don't think we should talk about this now with the whole class. And it's not embarrassing them. You can even do it quietly off to the side. But that helps them kind of figure out like, what can I share? What could I ask or talk about versus what should maybe stay in my head and it's just a me and adult conversation. And you can also, and this is just a typical teacher thing, privately signaling them to come back or redirect them, or maybe even just a silent redirection that maybe that's not really a great question for right now. Let's save it and you and I can talk about it one-on-one. The fourth troubleshooting tip I have for you, it kind of connects to the first one, is that your administrators want more academic time. They don't understand how this connects. Maybe they're not really invested in SEL. They don't understand how this helps. So the best way that I like to explain this is, first of all, through standards, because if your administrators are coming to you with the idea of more academic time, they're probably looking at standards and they're probably looking at expectations, right? So you can connect it back to your standards. You can connect it to speaking and listening standards in ELA. You can connect it to social studies standards. There's the CASEL competencies that are nationally known and nationally recognized. And if your state has SEL standards as part of your curriculum, you can identify those as well. I live in Ohio. I teach in Ohio, and we do have SEL standards. So that's part of my conversation is, hey, we have these standards. I have to teach them somehow. Here's how I'm going to do it. But you can connect them to academic standards as well. Document the impact that it's having. So maybe you get your teacher or your administrator to say, you can try it for a month. Great. Document it. Document what happened. Document how your academic achievement and academic engagement is going up. Track time on task. And you can let, even how much time you have with your kids compared to, I was solving all this recess drama and then this happened. And then, Johnny lost his cool and was dysregulated and I had to help him. How much time are you given back? So track that time, because I know a lot of the time administrators love data and data will, be great with it. And if your administrator is open to it, invite them in. Say, come and watch a morning meeting. Come and listen to what it looks like. Come and listen to what my kids and I are doing and let them see firsthand how powerful it really is. All right. So to wrap things up, the power of morning meetings is simple to me. And it's this: when students feel seen, heard, and valued each morning, they're going to bring their best selves to their learning. They're going to bring their best selves to you, and they're going to bring their best selves to their peers. And that's what we really want in our classrooms, right? So there is a lot of power in doing a morning meeting activity like this. To help you with the 4 quadrants and the implementation of things, I do have a link down below that you can download the morning meeting quadrants. And again, there is a teacher version of it and a student version of it that has the thinking prompts on it. So you can use both of those in your classroom. It's right down below in the audio description. And I would love to hear how things are going as you implement morning meeting or questions that you have. You can reach out to me on Instagram at MikeyDTeach. You can also head to my website, MikeyDTeach.com, and contact me there. I'd love to hear more. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so thankful that you came, and I hope that you have the best school year ever. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and good luck next year.
That session was smooth like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in your Animaniacs lunchbox. Want to snag a scholarship to our Back to School Success course? We're giving away 3. So apply now via the link in the show notes, your inbox, or the group before June 26th.